Psst, check out my Patreon.
The city of Townsville, your #1 destination of choice for giant monster battles since 1998.
LEGO Dimensions is a game that had always piqued my interest when it came to the Toys to Life trend from a few years back. Toys to Life games, for those of you who may be unaware, were a popular craze during the mid-2010s era of video games that has since died out after the fall of things like Skylanders and Disney Infinity. Skylanders, in particular, was a game that the younger generation seemed to fall in love with for a while, and is essentially the game responsible for popularizing the practice of separating a full game into a bunch of character packs, each sold separately. This was a method of game distribution that never appealed to me personally because I've never liked the practice of locking the content of a game behind any type of paywall, other than the amount it costs to purchase the disc, and it comes across as just selfish and scummy to me. I've always been against other practices like restricting the content of a game that's already available on the disc behind a DLC paywall, and the Toys to Life video games just feel like the exact same thing with extra steps. Locking content behind these expensive pieces of plastic comes across to me as a scummy business practice because it's essentially forcing you to spend hundreds of dollars to play the full singular game. Imagine if Nintendo and Game Freak made it so you had to buy each individual Pokemon other than the starters in order to be able to catch them in the game. Sure, you can play through it with just the starter Pokemon, but you're missing out on building an entire team and getting to experience the full extent of the game. That would be absolutely outrageous, right? Most game developers out there sell their games for $60 at launch and then throw in some optional add-on content later. What makes these Toys to Life games so special that they get to charge people more money to play the full game than the console they're playing the game on? That's just absurd. Setting that criticism aside, however, I will say that the concept of Toys to Life suits LEGO when you think about it, given that LEGO is already a toy company and you can actually separate the LEGO figures that come with the game from their stands to play with, unlike things like Amiibo or Disney Infinity where the figures are glued to the base so kids can't remove and play with them. At least with the LEGO minifigures, you can use them with other LEGO sets. Despite my acknowledgement that this concept is better suited for LEGO, the game was never something I was fully willing to commit to because it still costs hundreds of dollars to get the full experience at retail price, which is something that I personally value quite a lot as a gamer and consumer. If I'm going to be spending money on something, I want to get the most out of it. I want the entire package, which I think is an entirely reasonable thing to ask for. The fact that this game was a massive crossover between all sorts of licensed properties gave it a unique identity compared to most other LEGO games that have been produced, which are usually fully dedicated to just one intellectual property. This aspect made Dimensions tempt me a few different times, and I'm certain that that's what Warner Brothers was banking on with the inclusion of all of the properties that they own. However, that was still not enough to convince me to buy the game, until I found out that the Powerpuff Girls were going to be in it. Well, shoot, they got me, didn't they? Now, something to consider is that it is possible to play the base game with just the starter kit and its 3 characters. However, at that point you're missing out on dozens of other bonus worlds and challenges that the game was essentially built around. LEGO Dimensions was made with the intent of it being a gigantic crossover where you get to visit all sorts of these different worlds and play as all of these diverse characters. By only purchasing the starter kit, you're only getting to experience a fraction of what the full game has to offer because everything else is locked behind overpriced paywalls. You might get a neat little figure out of it, but as a consumer, I'm not looking to purchase minifigures, I'm looking to buy a video game. If I was looking to buy Legos, I would go buy a Lego set. Why would I have spent over $500 on one singular game when I can purchase countless others at a fraction of that cost and get dozens of more hours of playtime across all of those games than I would over LEGO Dimensions individually? This, my friends, is why it took me so long to get around to trying out LEGO Dimensions for the first time, and consequently why it took me this long to make a video on it. Instead of giving diving in and buying the game while it was popular, I decided to wait until support for it had ceased and everything went down in price before purchasing the necessary components I required in order to experience the Powerpuff Girls content of this game. That is why I decided to hunker down in June of 2020 and acquire both Powerpuff Girls Reboot Lego packs secondhand for a much cheaper price than its initial selling value, along with the starter kit that is required for you to play this game. Funny story actually, the LEGO Dimensions starter pack usually sold around $100 new during its time in the sun, although now that the game's support has been discontinued, most starter kits have been increasingly harder to find. As of the time of this video, starter packs for the PS4 and Xbox One are selling for up towards $150 on Amazon, although I have seen some secondhand starter kits in person selling anywhere from $60 to $120. Thanks to the Wii U's lack of popularity, that version of the game is only selling for a whopping $18. That's right, $18 compared to $150. What the hell? That's quite a dramatic difference, wouldn't you say? Now, a little known fact that some may not be aware of is that the portal base of the Wii U version is also compatible with the PS3 and PS4, meaning that you can do what I did and snag the Wii U starter pack for a measly $20 because nobody plays the Wii U, and then spend $5 at GameStop for the PS4 disc, and then boom, you just bought the game for a fraction of its actual value. Unfortunately for Xbox users, only the Xbox starter packs will work on Xbox consoles, but luckily I've seen the Xbox 360 version selling for roughly $30, so it's not that much of a difference compared to the Wii U version. The version I'm playing for this video is the PS4 version, seeing as it is the most powerful console of the options available to me, and as such runs the most efficiently. Special thank you to whoever out there made the same gamepad compatible with both the Wii U and the PS4. Seriously, you are a lifesaver. I also acquired both Powerpuff Girls packs for relatively cheap off of the site Bricklink. This is a site that actually sells a lot of the LEGO Dimensions character packs for much cheaper than retail price, so give them a look every once in a while if you're interested in getting some for yourself. Even still, the Powerpuff Girls packs are going to be the sole focus of this video, so apologies to anybody out there who wanted a review of LEGO Dimensions as a whole, but that's not happening unless somebody wants to send me some NFC 213 stickers with every character pack coded to them in the game. With that said, let's go ahead and get right into what is required for you to experience this content for yourself in LEGO Dimensions.
It does look unstable. I saw some glowing parts get sucked into it. They must have been important.
Well, it seems to be alive, at least.
My relic scanner's showing that there's definitely something through there.
Could it be leading us to the missing bricks?
Could be.
Or Metalbeard.
Couldn't be.
That's Metalbeard! He's in trouble! Or he's happy. He uses R for a lot of things. Either way, we have to find him.
Before getting into the content of the game itself, I do feel it is important to go over the setup of this game, seeing as the portal base and minifigure functionality are a core component of experiencing the game. Also, I can't believe I'm saying this, but welcome to the first ever Shadow Streak unboxing video, guys. Okay, so as established previously, you are definitely going to need to obtain the starter pack in order to play this game. It is physically impossible to experience LEGO Dimensions without having the portal base hooked up to your console and the 3 starting characters. You will be unable to progress past the first section of the game without obtaining these 3 characters, so even if you buy the portal base separately, you still will need Batman, Gandalf, and Wildstyle in order to play the game. They are, however, the only characters that you will get to experience playing the rest of the game with, unless you shell out some extra cash for any of the dozens of other character packs. The game does not allow you to freely select characters at will like most other LEGO games. Instead, you need to have the appropriate character tag placed on the portal base in order to access them. When you first start up the game, it will provide you with instructions on how to build the portal base as well as the Batmobile, the specialized vehicle that pertains to Batman, which also also comes in the starter kit. After building all of these base components, you get to play through the first level, which is based on the Wizard of Oz. And then after that, the game opened up to me and I was able to stop playing the story mode because I didn't really care about it and just focus on the Powerpuff Girls. As I said, I obtained this game with the sole intent of experiencing the Powerpuff Girls content of the game, so I did not want to play any more of the story mode after this. It might be good, it might suck. I don't know, but hopefully the Scarecrow joke wasn't the only good thing the writing had to offer.
Because of the wonderful things he does, we're out to see the wizard.
It's not just singing, it's a singing scarecrow, amongst other oddities.
The Scarecrow. I knew it. This is all a hallucination.
I think he's going crazy.
Going, my dear. He's wearing a bat costume.
Maybe I'll return to this campaign someday, but given the tediousness of setting up the gamepad and getting all the separate figures out, as well as certain objectives being walled off behind specific characters you need to own, it just doesn't seem worth the hassle to me. Again, if I did end up acquiring all of the stickers for all of these characters, maybe I'd consider it then, but unless that happens, I don't see it happening. But now, I think we can finally get into the core of this video. As with most LEGO Dimensions sets, the full content of the Powerpuff Girls property was separated into two separate packs. A team pack consisting of Blossom and Bubbles, and a fun pack dedicated strictly to Buttercup. I would say it's typical that Buttercup got a pack to herself, but this was probably put into production right after Season 1, so the bias wasn't at its worst quite yet. And besides, of the three characters, I think Buttercup is the worst to play as anyways. Each of the girls' LEGO Dimensions figures functions just as you'd expect them to. Simply place the figure anywhere on the gamepad and the game will automatically register them as playable characters for you to control. Remove them from the pad and they're instantly taken out of the game. The quality of the figures is just about what you'd expect, although surprisingly the Powerpuff Girls style lends itself particularly well to a LEGO minifigure. I honestly didn't expect them to look as accurate as they do. However, it's incredibly awkward to see the girls with hands. Even if they're just the rounded LEGO nubs one usually expects from a minifigure, it's still a little strange. I also think the inclusion of Octi in the hotline is pretty cool, but Buttercup's mech seems out of place because this isn't really a reference to anything in the reboot or the original show as far as I'm aware. The only thing that comes close off the top of my head is her eagle armor that she conjures up from Imagine That, but that's about it. All in all, the LEGO figures are better than I anticipated, but that's enough about the setup. Let's get into the gameplay.
I get super bored if I'm not punching things! Oh my gosh!
We never settle down, and we don't play around. And if you're up to the challenge, then we'll knock you down. This isn't fun and games, we're here to bring the pain. And when we're through with you, you're gonna know our name.
Yeah!
When we're through with you, you're gonna know our name.
And so once again, the day is saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.
You're gonna know our name.
So the question that I would like to start with is, what does the Powerpuff Girls content of LEGO Dimensions actually have to offer? Well, right off the bat, I just want to commend the developers of this game for cramming in a ton of surprisingly accurate references to both the original series and the reboot in one convenient package. When I initially set out to make this video, I had the intent of covering every single reference to the franchise that exists within this game. Unfortunately, due to the nature of this game, as well as certain circumstances that I will be getting into later, it did not allow me to accomplish that goal. As a result, I will be acknowledging all of the references that I was able to experience, and I apologize if I leave any out that some of you personally enjoy. In my eyes, this game went above and beyond what I was expecting from an expansion pack. Despite being an already jam-packed game due to all of the other IPs that existed within it, the fact that the Powerpuff Girls got this much love and attention to detail honestly astounds me, especially because it predominantly leans more towards the reboot. There are so many locations embedded in this world than I ever expected to witness in the gargantuan city of Townsville. You've got iconic set pieces like the girls' home where you can assist the professor, there's the school and the Coliseum you see so often in the reboot, City Hall, the Pickle Museum from Horn Sweet Horn, the theater from Tiara Trouble. Out of every Powerpuff Girls game ever made, this is the closest one has ever come to mimicking what I would want to experience in playing a video game based on the Powerpuff Girls. You could almost say this game makes you feel like the Powerpuff Girls. You get to fly around a city helping citizens with tasks and defeating enemies as you go along. You can explore all sorts of nooks and crannies to find secrets and visit the recognizable set pieces you would normally see in the show. My only complaint with the structure of the world is that there isn't an overarching story of any kind or plot to follow through with. Although, given that there are so many different properties represented in this game, I can see why only select IPs were given full-on story packs. Instead, Townsville is just an open playground with dozens of objectives to complete at your leisure. Another missed opportunity is that there's no giant monster battle in the middle of the city. Now that would have been cool. But hey, monsters aside, there are still plenty of other fun quests here to complete. The game is broken down into main quests and side missions, which you can play in any order you want. There's no linear path to follow, so it's basically a free-for-all for you to do whatever missions you want in any order you want. Main quests include various activities like assisting Professor Utonium in the making of a concoction by mixing chemicals X, Y, and Z. Thankfully, there's no chemical W to be found. Bliss doesn't actually make a single appearance at all in this world, but that's mostly because this pack is only based upon Season 1 of the reboot. Another quest has you escorting Miss Keen back to the school after she gets lost in the woods. The mayor tasks you with finding 10 pickles for his pickle museum, which you get access to after finding all of them. He even makes a little reference to Donnie's rampage from Horn Sweet Horn.
Wonderful! Now the museum can be opened up to the public again. Note to self, this time used unicorn-resistant walls.
And this is what I mean when I say I adore the lengths that this game went to squeeze in references. I'd love to just sit here and go through every single line of dialogue one at a time and comment on how they're a reference to this episode or that event, pointing out how Princess references her money tiger or the mayor needing a new assistant in regards to Bye Bye Bellum, for example. There are just subtle nods galore, and I admire the dedication that was actually put into a world centered primarily around the reboot of all things.
Mayor. I remember voting for him based on his timeless campaign slogan, "Vote for mayor for mayor."
There are, of course, also plenty of references to the original too, such as Bubbles' idol animation where she sings about coloring.
Coloring, coloring, coloring.
Even the citizens of Townsville make passing comments about the fashionistas and Miss Bellum, even if Miss Bellum's name is misspelled in the subtitle, but hey, it wouldn't be a reboot world without spelling errors, right? Heck, one guy even makes a meta joke about the town being rebooted. Ah man, this is so fun to talk about, especially as someone who's seen every episode of the Powerpuff Girls, both original and reboot. I'm not even a fan of the reboot, I'm just a fan of detail in general, and seeing actual effort put into this is admirable to say the least. Besides, as somebody who's experienced everything that the reboot had to offer, the fact that I can get all of these references is either really awesome or really sad. I prefer the more positive perspective, personally. There's even a teensy tiny little detail on the closed down Poke-Yoke sign which reads that a hamster problem has shut down the school, referencing Pee-wee's destruction of the building at the beginning of the Wrinklegruff Gals. There are even more subtle references in the form of Chilaxi's Guru being available on one of the street corners, as well as the arcade seen in The Stayover. Even the talking dog's "It's Good" sign appears on some billboards at the top of buildings that you can notice while flying around, and I just love that, you know? Side missions also take up an even greater portion of the world. Basically, there are these one-off tasks where you complete an objective to get a gold brick. Examples include Superman 64ing it and flying through rings, navigating this maze and destroying structures, or rescuing this guy from being trapped inside a volcano. There are also 10 him statues located around the city, but one aspect that's slightly disappointing is that him isn't really present all that much. He pops in every now and again by the station that shows you where the statues are on your radar, and he also disguised himself as a news anchor, but it really is a missed opportunity that he isn't the ultimate final boss of the area or anything like that. That would have been awesome. I enjoyed Mojo's mission though, where he asks you to get him a muffin only to have you turn around so that he can trick you into a moment of sabotage, which I find is downright hilarious.
If you were perhaps to get me a MacGuffin, a muffin, then that would make Mojo very happy indeed. Ha ha ha! I just needed you to turn around to ambush you with my army of partially roboticized doggies. Be worried, their bark is worse than their bite.
Like, it's such a Mojo thing to do, and I'm glad that the writing has a sense of humor like that. Mojo even talks in his Mo-linguish, unlike the show.
This won't be like the time I tried this with cats or with monkeys. This time, I made thousands of little tennis balls with your face on them and threw them. And then the dogs brought them back. And once again, I hurled them. And then once again, did the dogs bring them back. And then again, I made to throw them. But this time, I stopped myself. And the dogs did run. To summarize, the dogs now have an anger issue. And they blame you!
Princess's side mission isn't very exciting. You basically just go around the city finding a few people and bringing them back, but that's about it. Jemica's, on the other hand, is really cool. You get to go inside this dig site on Monster Island in order to navigate a tomb, which I found to be a fun little distraction and a great reference to Frenemy. But I think of all the side quests, Man-Boys Takes the Cake is my favorite. Not only is it a cool nod to Man Up 2 with how he's stealing the water in the area, but the mission literally references the title by calling itself Man Up 2.5, the state versus Man-Boy. So even the game continues the consistent trend with his character and capitalizes on another popular trend in movie subtitles, that being the whole blank versus blank. You follow him down to this gate where you collect some water and then he fights you in a boss battle, which is fun, but what I love most about Man-Boy in this game is this one little nifty line he says on his way down the mountain.
Hurry up, I've got childhood ruining videos on the internet to downvote.
That one hits a little close to home, although I've never actually gone far enough to say the reboot outright ruined my childhood. Other people have certainly said that though, that's for damn sure. Besides those main quests, there are side missions, as I said, such as restoring the bridge so the orphans can go to Puppy Island, as another reference to the Stayover episode. You can build a mechanical bull in the Matadome, which also is kind of a reference to the Stayover. You can fight the dragon from Once Upon a Townsville in its cave at the top of this very tall mountain, and even travel to Allegro's Rainbow Land dimension where you get to fight him and his party lobsters in a boss battle. And yes, he twerks, so even Lego could not escape that.
Aw, you're harshing my chill vibe, man.
I also really enjoyed the mission where you had to rebuild the Slice TV studio from the episode Power Up Puff, and all three of the races you could participate in were fun too, especially because you were flying around as the Powerpuff Girls. I have a few issues with some of the side missions being a bit forgettable, such as the fountain mission, which isn't really a reference to anything, but those are few and far between. I think the mission where you get to use the portal base to change your character's size and navigate this maze was really creative. It had a fun puzzle and made a neat little reference to the Townsville Muck Bucket, which was the newspaper that Silico was printing in Halt and Catch Silico. There's also the construction site where Packrat is known to be dwelling, and you can visit Townsville Prison. Mojo's lab doesn't appear in the world, sadly, but it does get to be center stage for the PPG Battle Arena. I didn't spend too much time on this one, so I don't have much more to share than that, but it seems like it could be fun with a group of friends because you're basically competing with one another to accomplish tasks and achieve a higher score than your peers. I was initially disappointed because I didn't think Mojo's lab was in the game, but after checking out the battle arena, I was thankfully relieved. But with that out of the way, perhaps now is a good time for me to dive into how the girls function gameplay-wise. Conveniently enough, all three of the Powerpuff Girls are relatively similar to each other, but maintain minor differences that separate each of them from being direct carbon copies. They can all fly by double tapping the jump button, which controls pretty well for the most part, although sometimes I do have difficulty getting the camera to point up or down because the altitude of the girls is also determined by the right stick. Still, it's incredibly fun to whiz around the city at high speeds and fly up to the highest points on the map. The girls also have basic punches and kick attacks, as well as a charged projectile. Blossom and Bubbles use their I-beams, while Buttercup does her spinning tornado move, which I think is a pretty cool way of giving her a unique identifying move with similar functionality. They are also each given a special ability, which any fan of the show can probably assume. Blossom has her signature ice breath, Bubbles has a sonic scream, and Buttercup can form a shield, which is also used for rolling platforms because curling her tongue isn't a very purposeful gameplay mechanic. Blossom's ice breath is undoubtedly broken compared to the other two girls, which isn't surprising, and is easily my favorite character to play as of the three. Each vehicle also serves a different function. The Hotline allows you to fly around the city at even faster speeds than the girls flying regularly, Octi can traverse the ground at a decent speed, and the Mech can use a powerful charge attack that deals massive damage but is honestly quite slow and stiff to handle. Each one has their perks and other special abilities you can use to complete objectives, but I personally don't find myself using them too much in this game, and when I do, it's usually the Hotline phone. The girls also get to use their Green Lantern powers to solve various puzzles and build specific items that can help assist in the given mission you're currently playing, but they aren't too prominent, and I'm honestly surprised that the concept wasn't utilized more. There certainly was a lot of untapped potential there. Alas, despite all of the gushing and appreciation that I just laid out for you, there are some very glaring problems that ultimately diminished my experience with this game. Make no mistake, the presentation of this world is phenomenal and I cannot sing its praises enough, but due to the structure of how this game was built and how it intends for you to play, it actually intruded on my experience more than I would have liked and ultimately soured my outlook on it. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I'm not a fan of the Toys to Life concept because I hate the gatekeeping of a game's content behind paywalls, especially in cases like this where the full experience of the game costs several $100s to play. For instance, there are points in this world where you are required to use a character from a franchise outside of the Powerpuff Girls in order to obtain the gold bricks. That's right, despite having purchased the Powerpuff Girls pack, you cannot actually enjoy the full content of the pack without using characters from other packs. The game essentially gives you two options when you find yourself in situations like this. Either go out and buy the characters pack so you can use them on your gamepad, or you can use the in-game hire a hero option for a measly, 15,000 studs. The catch, of course, isn't that it costs you 15,000 studs, it's that it costs you 15,000 studs to use them for 2 minutes. Yes, 120 seconds is all you get before a portal opens up and the character warps back out of there, forcing you to spend another 15,000 studs to use them for another 2 minutes. Now, I have a few choice comments on this concept, the first of which being that this is a clear indication to me that the game was purposefully designed to heavily influence you to go out and spend more money on other characters so that you can beat the game. Sure, you technically have a free way of accomplishing the same task, for lack of a better word, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. It might not cost you real-life money to spend the 15,000 studs to finish the objective, but it will cost you the time to grind up all of those studs over and over and over again in order to be able to afford enough heroes to complete every task that you want to complete, assuming you're going for 100%, of course. And I don't doubt the fact that there are people out there who don't mind that grind. There are efficient ways to build up studs that can cut down a portion of the time you would spend acquiring all of that currency, but there are so many of these located all over the Powerpuff Girls map alone that the amounts add up very, very quick. 15,000 studs is what you need to spend for one challenge, and again, you only get 2 minutes, so if you don't complete your challenge within that time frame, that's another 15,000 studs down the drain. Combine that with the fact that vehicle upgrades cost 10 to 15,000 studs each, on top of the fact that you need to spend studs on other objectives in the game, such as purchasing upgrades for various locations or buying special power bricks, it's a lot. I'm also confused by this system because the very first quest, the one where you help the professor with his chemical concoction, the game lets you hire Voldemort once and then for whatever reason it doesn't charge you any studs to use him anytime after that. That's right, I spent 15,000 studs on him the first time and then as soon as I went back after the time ran out, it just let me pick him again. This game really must have taken notes from the reboot because where is the consistency here? Why are there times where the game doesn't charge me for repeat hero usage but then most of the time it does? Why couldn't the game make every hire a hero a one-time fee with no time limit? That way I don't feel pressured by the game to finish my tasks within a certain amount of time. I already proved I could grind up the studs necessary to use the character. Heck, personally, I would have designed this hire a hero concept so that the character is only allowed to be playable within a set radius of the objective. There are other challenges in the game that use this radius concept, like the shrinking puzzle for instance, so why can't this be done the same way? Well, because they want you to buy the character pack. That's why. The company wants your money. That is what every design problem in this game can ultimately be boiled down to. This comes across to me as a more expensive version of what mobile apps do, where they center their games around the pay-to-win philosophy. If you've seen my video on the Powerpuff Girls 2016 mobile apps, you'll know that I'm already not a fan of this practice either. I'm more lenient on mobile games, however, because those are usually at least free to play with in-app purchases, so it feels a bit more justified because I understand that the game developers need to make their money somehow, but this is a console game. A game that they already expect you to pay $100 for just to experience the base game, which includes a pad that is required to play and a whopping 3 characters. You have to spend $100 minimum to experience this game. That's 167% more than the standard AAA game release. Then, on top of that, they expect you to buy all of these character packs, which were priced from like $10 to upwards of $60 each. I lucked out and managed to only spend $50 to experience the PPG content. That is, the starter pack, game disc, and both character packs combined, but I feel so sorry for anyone that paid full price for this stuff. And furthermore, I can't imagine what it must be like to own multiple character packs. This is an incredibly scummy business practice, and I am so glad that this trend died out because it was ripping so many people off. I understand the argument that you're also getting a toy with it, but why can't there just be an option to play the game by itself? Another aspect of this game that really bothered me was when I attempted the Gemica quest for the very first time. The game requires a sword user in order to open certain doors and provides you with Finn as the optional hire a hero for players like me who don't actually own a sword user. So I go and rent Finn for 2 minutes only to have to sit through that cutscene I had spoken about earlier, and then I entered the tomb to complete the challenge Gemica had set out for me. This is what I was met with. The game legitimately failed to load the content of the room for me, meaning that I had to exit the tomb and sit through the cutscene all over again, all while my timer on Finn's character continued to count down closer and closer to 0. Lo and behold, my 2 minutes ran out and the game cheated me out of 15,000 studs that I had to collect all over again. Oh, what great game design. And the best part is, I had the room fail to load on me on more than one occasion. It almost makes me suspicious as to whether or not it is intentionally programmed to do this. And don't even get me started on the Puppy Island mission, where you have to use Wonder Woman to mind control this girl over to a puppy. Yes, I kid you not, the game requires you to spend 15,000 studs to use Wonder Woman's lasso to move a girl over to a dog. But the best part about it is when I attempted to do this on my playthrough, the girl refused to go to the dog. I would mind control her with the lasso without issue, but as soon as I tried to move her over to a puppy, she just decided to stop being mind controlled for no explainable reason. She just stopped, let go of the lasso, turned around, and walked back to where she was standing. Over and over and over again. And the thing is, the game will not allow you to re-lasso her while she's walking back. No, you have to wait until she is standing back in her default position before you can have another go at it. Meaning that's even more seconds drifting away where you can't do anything while you watch her walk back to her spot to try again. It feels like the game is intentionally sabotaging me after I spend the studs because it demands I pay for the other expansion packs. I wouldn't be so salty if the game didn't give me a time limit on these characters. Did you know that it is physically impossible to 100% this world without the Mission Impossible pack? Literally impossible. The other cases with Finn and Wonder Woman I can either chalk up to the game being buggy or the game being programmed to screw over its players, but the mission at Townsville Prison pisses me off the most because of one specific task that the game requires you to do. In order to get the Townsville prison brick, you need to use Ethan Hunt's character to disguise himself in order to break in. No other character in the game has this ability, might I add. Disguise is a unique character ability exclusive only to Ethan Hunt and nobody else in LEGO Dimensions, meaning you can't use another hero you may have on hand in order to complete this mission. Most of the objectives you need to complete in this game can be performed by multiple characters, and I think that's entirely fair because you're not necessarily forcing people to buy every single character pack in order to complete a world. I don't know of any other cases in the game that do this because I've only experienced the Townsville world, but allow me to at least go in depth with why this one is such a problem for me. So first of all, in order to obtain the platform that allows you to disguise Ethan's character, you need to shoot this target on the front of this building to break it down and rebuild it. Guess what this lovely game decided to do? It gives you the hire a hero option, which is nice and all, except that the hero it's offering is not Ethan Hunt. It's Legolas from Lord of the Rings. In order to break this target, you need a character that is capable of shooting things with a projectile. So sure, Legolas makes sense given that he's an archer. But guess what? Ethan Hunt has a fucking gun. He can shoot the target himself. What the hell kind of bullshit is that? Like, that's so scummy. The game literally gives you the option to hire one hero just so you can shoot the stupid target, and then wants you to hire a different hero to actually break in when you can just use the second hero to complete both objectives. Why would the game not provide you a hero that can accomplish both goals for any other reason than wanting to force you to spend more in-game studs so that you get frustrated and just go out and buy the character pack? This game is literally designed to screw you over if you want to 100% it. Ignore this hire a hero block and instead just do what I did. Go up the tower, grab Ethan's hire a hero, and then jump down to the bottom and shoot the target with him. At least, that's what I would suggest you do if the mission were actually possible to complete. What the game never tells you is that once you have the disguise panel built and you move Ethan over on top of it, you are required to put Ethan's character tag on the gamepad in the center circle. That's right. You cannot disguise Ethan unless you have his physical character tag placed on the gamepad. Even if you spend the 15,000 studs to hire him as a hero, you are still required to put his character on the gamepad. The game cannot and will not disguise Ethan as a police officer until you put his Lego figure on the gamepad, meaning even though you just spent the studs to borrow him for 2 minutes of gameplay, you still cannot break into prison unless you buy his character pack. So then I ask, why even give us the option to hire him in the first place? Why not just straight up say, hey, you can't complete this objective unless you buy his pack? Why even make the prison accessible? Why even design a mission like this at all? This right here is the pinnacle case I can make to prove why I believe this game was intentionally designed to be anti-consumer. My problems with LEGO Dimensions don't stop there, because this isn't the only scenario in which the game outright lied to me. Now, it's entirely possible that I'm just missing the solution to this, but based on what I've seen online from other people who have experienced this exact same problem, I know I'm not the only person here. That, of course, being Octi's vine cut ability. Or lack thereof, I should say. There is a particular gold brick present inside the church that was seen in the episode Bubbles of the Opera, where a clump of vines are presently growing over this altar that only certain characters are capable of cutting through, even though the Powerpuff Girls have heat vision and could easily burn through it themselves, but whatever. After checking the little hint block that spawns next to the altar, I found that Octi has the ability to cut these vines, yet no matter what button combinations I press on the controller, Octi refuses to cut the vines. The game also doesn't provide a hire a hero option either, by the way. To double check this, I went into Octi's builds to verify that the ability was supposed to be granted, and sure enough, it's listed right there on screen, so I know I'm not crazy. Octi is supposed to have the vine cut ability. I even tried upgrading his base form a ton by dumping over 100,000 studs into him, and that didn't work. So in essence, I just wasted all of the currency I'd collected for nothing. I also did this before most of the hire a hero tasks, hence why I struggled so much with having to grind them up. It's almost as if the developers didn't even bother to finish building Octi's character or something. I ultimately ended up having to hire Finn on Monster Island, flying all the way to the church as fast as I possibly could, switching back to Finn to cut the vines, and thinking my strategy was clever enough to solve the problem, I had assumed I was gonna acquire the gold brick. Until I found out that this one specific skeleton vehicle can complete the task anyways, so even though I just did this super roundabout method that I thought was clever to cut these stupid vines, the game once again implemented a wall to prevent me from completing the task. I physically cannot get this gold brick without buying the pack that this vehicle is a part of. You see, this is the kind of roadblocking shit that completely ruined my enjoyment of this game. I appreciate and love the effort that went into the presentation here, but actually trying to do everything that the pack is supposed to be offering is a miserable experience unless you own all of these other characters necessary to complete the tasks. My ultimate takeaway from this experience is that LEGO Dimensions is an impossibly frustrating game when you only have a handful of characters. And it was designed to be that way. Sure, you can play through the game if you don't mind grinding studs to rent characters for 2 minutes only to get screwed over because it won't work half the time anyway, but if you're a completionist type like me, this is a frustrating nightmare. It's miserable. As I mentioned in passing earlier, I was originally planning to 100% this world and show off all of the game's content in regards to the reboot, but these specific cases where I was essentially walled off from being able to complete it just made me quit the whole thing outright. I initially hadn't beaten Jemica's quest because of this, and it was only after I decided to come back and try again after a few days that I managed to get this footage of it. My desire to play LEGO Dimensions was crushed to dust after witnessing all of these horrid decisions and implemented restrictions that prevented me from getting to experience what I thought I had paid for. I wouldn't have as much of a problem with this if all of the puzzles were built around using the Powerpuff Girls specifically and their abilities, or at the very least making the use of non-Powerpuff characters limited to things unrelated to gold bricks. This game sets an expectation that isn't met in the actual content itself, and that's a damn shame because had it not been designed to gatekeep people from playing, I'm sure I and many others would be able to call this an enjoyable experience. Unfortunately, as it stands, I cannot say that. But that's going to do it for my coverage of LEGO Dimensions. A few side notes. I'm well aware that the game probably wasn't intended for you to just go to any adventure world you want as soon as you beat the first level, but other than the stud grinding, I see no reason why somebody would have trouble doing that. Furthermore, the game shouldn't have provided it as an option. If the game didn't just force you to drop 15k studs every time you want to obtain a gold brick, I wouldn't have very many major complaints. Most of the problems can all be tied back to the plain and simple reality that the game was designed in a way that heavily persuades you to spend a shit ton of money on it. There are other packs out there that I would have loved to experience, such as Jurassic World, Portal 2, and Sonic the Hedgehog. But fuck that, I'm not about to spend $50 on a single character pack, that's absurd. I can buy plenty of other games with that same amount of money. I'd love to experience the full game, but the only way I see myself doing that is by obtaining the NFC stickers for all the characters, and again, I can't be bothered to go through the trouble of doing that. It's just not worth it. Anyways, I hope my coverage of the Powerpuff Girls content in LEGO Dimensions was sufficient. Please let me know what you thought of this video and if you'd like to see more like this in the future. I had a lot of fun talking about this, even if the game did get a little irritating at times. I'm not necessarily saying I want to cover every single pack of LEGO Dimensions or anything, but if people want to see it happen and somehow I can get hooked up with the stickers, I'd consider it. Overall though, getting to just fly around and explore the map of Townsville was a very fun experience, and my admiration for the presentation is the only portion of this game that I wish to remember. Would I recommend you play this? Well, if you have enough characters to complete all of the objectives, then absolutely I would. However, if you're in a situation like me where you'd only buy the game for the PPG content and nothing else, well, I'd suggest you just watch a 100% walkthrough on YouTube at that point because I really don't see it being worth it. Or, if you're actually interested in playing the story, you could probably save up and purchase the ×2 stud multiplier, which makes grinding a heck of a lot easier. Only reason I didn't do that is because I had zero desire to play the story. I only got this game with the intent of experiencing the Powerpuff Girls pack. And I'm certain that the developers did not intend somebody to get this game only for the Powerpuff Girls content. Still, The problems that I acknowledged are prevalent in a situation like mine, and I think that's entirely valid. Hopefully Warner Brothers will be willing to re-release this game as a standalone version at some point where all the characters and worlds are already unlocked for you, so you only have to pay one amount to get the full experience. I don't know how likely that is, but that would make this game far more accessible compared to the state it is in as of now. Apologies to those who love this game. I'm sure it's a much more enjoyable experience when you have more characters accessible to you, and maybe I'll come back around to it someday should circumstances change where I actually have access to more worlds and character packs. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.